Hey college football fans, welcome to episode 41 of Walk It Off with Chappy. Gorgeous day here in Michigan, and lately you've heard and seen a lot of things about realignment, and people have been asking, Chappy, what are your thoughts? What do you expect to happen? What do you see happening? Do you like this? Well, let me first start off by saying no, I don't like it. But as with most things in life, when change happens, you have to figure out a way to make the best of it. It's kind of like going out to dinner at a restaurant that you love and they've taken one of your favorites off the menu, but you're hungry and you do like to eat, you do like that restaurant, so you're going to figure out what else can I enjoy here, how can I make the most of this meal. So this is the start of Big 12 preview week here on the CFP podcast, and a big question that's thrown out even prior to realignment is what's going to come of the Big 12 conference. Are they going to be considered a Power 5 league, or are they going to be considered kind of like a G5 league? And I'm going to answer that by tackling some dominoes that are likely to fall in realignment first. So I'm going to come back to the Big 12, so stay tuned. But I'm going to start by looking at the ACC. Now, their commissioner, Jim Phillips, pretty fresh on the job. He is a smart dude. I've talked to the man before. I've followed him with his work at Northwestern. He's done great things, and I think he will do great things for the ACC. He is not going to let this conference crumble without a fight, because obviously the SEC is expanding with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma in the very near future. The Big Ten just added UCLA and USC to their conference. And then we're starting to hear rumors of the Big 12 adding potentially 4, maybe 6 Pac-12 teams, as it looks like that conference might start to disband. So let me start with the ACC. I think that Jim Phillips is going to do everything that he can and use all those ADs, all those presidents, all those coaches in the ACC to try and make sure that they keep their teams in that conference. So they're going to make big pitches to Clemson and Miami and North Carolina, even Georgia Tech, to say, here's why you need to stay. I think they're going to push hard for Notre Dame. Now, it makes sense for Notre Dame to go to the ACC over the Big Ten, because if they wanted to go to the Big Ten, they'd have been there already. They have already struck deals with scheduling for football in the ACC. They play in the ACC in basketball and in baseball. And the ACC is a very good basketball conference, a pretty good baseball conference, and a pretty good football conference. So there's reasons that they can stick together and make it work. In addition to Notre Dame, the second big power that I think the ACC and Jim Phillips are going to go after is Florida from the SEC. Now hear me out on this. The ACC already has the two other big Florida schools, Florida State and Miami. And it's going to make a little bit more sense for the Gators and their programs to go to the ACC. One, because it will make travel just a little bit easier. I mean, SEC programs aren't too far from Gainesville, but neither are ACC schools. There's already that in-state rivalry between those three within the state of Florida. But I also think the ACC should make a pitch to try and get UCF to renegotiate and get out of the Big 12 and join the ACC. I think that's going to be a better fit geographically and also competitively for the Knights. And then I also think that the ACC might try and lure West Virginia into coming to join their conference. One, because geography is a little bit better, and I know that geography seems to be one of the last things to consider in this realignment phase we've been going through. But they've got that backyard brawl with Pitt, some of their other historic rivalries that they've got going. West Virginia is a school that I think that they would save a lot in staying in and around the coastal area as opposed to traveling to some of those other Big 12 sites or former Big 12 sites as things keep moving. So keeping the 14 teams that the ACC has, and then adding Notre Dame and Florida potentially, plus West Virginia and UCF, that puts them at 18 teams, and I think that keeps them a power player, and they've already got their own network. So what happens then to the SEC? Well, if they lose Florida, but we know that they're gaining Oklahoma and Texas in anywhere from 1 to 3 years, I think that, that puts them at 15 teams. I think that they're going to then go after Baylor from the Big 12, as well as Oklahoma State and TCU. So Baylor and TCU already would be following Texas and leaving that footprint. The TCU Dallas-Fort Worth market would be huge for the SEC and the SEC network. And then you bring over Oklahoma State and Boone Pickens' money, as well as their long intrastate rivalry with Oklahoma. I think it just fits. So losing Florida, but gaining those 5 teams, or those 3 teams, including or in addition to Texas and Oklahoma, that puts the SEC at 18 teams. So then what happens then to the Big 12? Well, the schools that they're rumored to be adding most likely are Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. In addition, it seems like the Big 12 would be a better fit for Oregon and Washington, not just geographically, but I think competitively as well. So that adds 6 teams to that area. And then I think also that would leave the Pac-12 with only 4 teams left, Stanford and Cal, who I think are a reasonable fit in the Big 10. And if the Big 10 adds those 2 high academic achieving schools to their already high achieving academic footprint, that puts the Big 10 then at 18 teams, with the addition of USC and UCLA, and then Stanford and Cal. So the remaining 2 teams from the Pac-12, Washington State and Oregon State, seems only fitting that they also join the Big 12. So the Pac-12 essentially would be merging into the Big 12 conference. That way Washington and Washington State would join the Big 12, as well as Oregon and Oregon State. Now, adding Oregon would be huge, because one of the things that the Big 12 needs to do, that all of those other 3 power conferences already have, is a TV network. And I think that maybe they pool their West Coast money, especially Phil Knight and all that Nike money out in Eugene, Oregon, plus some of the power brokers in Seattle, Washington. You put together a Big 12 network, and they already have one going with the Pac-12 network. So the entertainment gurus, George Klavkov and new Big 12 commissioner Brett Yormark, you add those 2, you combine those 2, they both have a job in administration in the new Big 12 conference, and they work out some sort of entertainment deal. Yormark was working in business with Jay-Z and other entertainment companies that put out visual media and entertainment. So I think that that's a big thing that the Big 12 would need to do in order to attract some of these programs, but also to continue to make money and get their product out to the rest of the world. So they're already adding BYU, Houston, Cincy, and UCF next year. But again, like I talked about, I think UCF might try to renegotiate and go to the ACC, especially if Jim Phillips and the people and the powers that be in the ACC conference try and make a pitch for them. And I don't think losing UCF is going to hurt too much in the long run for the Big 12, because they already have, or they're going to be keeping Texas Tech, Kansas, Kansas State, and Iowa State, possibly losing West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and TCU, and then UCF in addition. So that would put the Big 12 at 15 teams. So they can either add one more and go to 16, and I think the most logical add would be SMU out of the AAC. Again, you're getting that Dallas-Fort Worth market. SMU athletics has really been on the upswing in football, but also basketball as of late. I think they've got some pretty good other sports like track and field that you could throw out there to lure people. But then if you want to add 2 more and get the Big 12 up to 18, just like the other power conferences would have, logical choices would be San Diego State, because you're already going into California and taking kind of what's left of the Pac-12, and then also Boise State. I think Boise State would be a good fit for the Big 12. I think that they've earned it. If Cincinnati can move up and UCF can move up to be in a power conference, Boise State was there and in prime well before those 2 programs were, at least on the national big time level. So Boise State, I think, is a logical fit to go there, especially when you consider that they're in that Rocky Mountain, that mountain region, with potentially Colorado and Utah already going to the Big 12 if they decide to move there. So then you've got 4 power conferences, which makes things symmetrical in college football. And that's one of my points, was it's either you're going to condense down into two big conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, and the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC would all get purged and split apart. But I think it's a little bit more logical, and I think it's easier if we go to the 4 power conferences. So as much money as the Big Ten and the SEC are thinking about making, you also have to kind of figure out you don't want to get too far ahead of the apple cart, right? So going to 4, I think, would make the most sense. And so if you've got 4 18-team power conferences with the Big 12, the ACC, and then even bigger, the SEC and the Big 10, you can have either a 4-team playoff, where I think, and I propose that all 4 of those power conferences have a 4-team conference championship playoff, a little mini playoff. You can do it in 2 consecutive weekends, and you take the champ from each of those, and those are the 4 teams that play for the college football playoff. Seems like a natural 4-team pairing. Or if we do eventually expand to 12 teams, which I think is inevitable, and I think it will happen. I'm not saying it should, but I think it will happen. Then what you can do is you can take the 4 conference champions from those 4 power conferences now. They each get a bye, and you have 8 at-large teams or programs or spots that can be divvied up however needs to be among those 4 power conferences, but maybe have a caveat that you can take no more than 4 per conference. That way each conference would be represented by more than just 1 team. And again, if you've got 4 18-team power conferences, it's very unlikely, maybe even bordering impossible, that you're going to have one conference that really only has 1 good team, and there is just such a humongous drop off from 1 to 2, whereas the other 3 would have more competitors. So, I mean, you could have a 4-4, 2-2. You could have a 4-4, 3-1. You could have a 4-3-3 and 2. However it's going to work out, but you know, if you're going to go to 12-team playoff, I think that that's how it could work. So that's my thoughts on realignment. And again, I don't like it. I love college football and college athletics in general being a regional endeavor, but if this is the route we're going, how can we make it work? If we've already missed the off-ramp, what's the best way to get to the destination we want to without too much energy being spent in the wrong direction? So let me know your thoughts. And again, we're going to be looking closer at the Big 12 Conference this week on the CFP podcast and on our Walk It Off with Chappy. So that's me. I'm Chappy. This is who I am. This is what I know. This is what I love. And I appreciate all of you.